Does it ever feel to you like life is an uphill struggle? One thing after another? You're not alone if you feel that way. It takes a lot of effort to make it through life. But there is a reason for that. And that is because whenever we humans have a goal, we always envision that goal as being above where we are. That's how our minds work. So we see meeting a goal as going up to meet it. So like if somebody is very good at their job, we'll say, let's say somebody's really competent at work, we'll say, she's really on top of things. If somebody gets a promotion, we say that they're climbing the career ladder. And, you know, I go to a lot of funerals, and rarely do I hear anybody talking about wanting to go down. Everybody wants up. That's exactly how it works. We humans envision up as the place of goals. And that came to my mind as I was hearing the gospel today. If you love me, you're going to keep my word. But it's hard to keep Jesus' word. Following Jesus is not easy. It's a hard path. It's an uphill struggle. Have you ever noticed that there are kind of, in a sense, two Jesuses in the Bible? There's the Jesus who's very merciful and loving and patient. And then there's the Jesus who's pretty strict, who has a very high standard. And if you were ever to go through each of those stories and pay attention to what the trend was, it's very clear. Jesus is strict with those who follow his path. Those who say, I want to be part of your team, Jesus. He's strict with them. And the ones who are sinners, who are completely lost, he's nothing but merciful to them. Think about it from the Bible. If you got caught right in the middle of the act of adultery, and you were brought into the center of the town, and everyone had a stone raised to throw at you to give you the punishment for your crime, Jesus would stroll right into the middle of the crowd. He would have everybody disperse, and then he would go over to you and say, it's all right, you can go. Just don't do it again. Simple as that. And if you're a tax collector, somebody who's a known cheat, known sinner, that's exactly who Jesus wants to go to dinner with. Jesus would come over to you and say, I want to go to your house for dinner tonight. And when he came, he didn't shame you. He didn't say anything to get at you or under your skin. He just enjoyed your company. And everyone else would be jealous. What is Jesus doing with him? It's interesting that when we see people who actually want to follow Jesus, he turns on a totally different mode. Do you remember the young man who said, Lord, I've kept all your commandments. I'm ready for the next level. Give me the next level. And Jesus goes, you want the next level? All right, here you go. Sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then come follow me completely. And it says that the young man goes away sad because it's too hard. Remember when his followers said, we want to go spread the good news all over, Jesus. Let us be your ambassadors. He said, all right, but here's how you do it. No lunch bag, no extra set of clothes, no extra sandals. You just go and see what happens. And of course, famously, Jesus says, do you want to follow me? Then take up your cross. Jesus is calling the followers to a higher standard. I think that's maybe what's going on in that second reading too about the great mountain. John is the author of the book of Revelation, and John says, I saw this incredible vision of this great mountain. And there was the goal at the top of the mountain, the heavenly Jerusalem. There it is again. You gotta go up. A couple of weeks ago, I bought a bike. And I did that because my last parish was in Oneonta, and it is way too hilly there to go biking. So I didn't even try it. But I figured maybe I could handle here if I stayed by the river. But guess what? As soon as I got the bike, I realized there's a lot of hills here too. But that's okay because I've got a 10-speed bike. So I can gear up when I need to, and I can gear down when I need to. And I was thinking, that's what we Christians really need. We need like a 10-speed life. We need to be able to gear up when it's time to overcome a challenge and gear down when the time is right. It is always going to feel better coasting downhill. That's always going to feel better than pumping uphill. But there's no virtue in the coasting. Have you ever seen those bumper stickers that people put on their cars that say, "This car climbed Mount Washington"? No one ever has a bumper sticker that says, "This car coasted down Mount Washington." No one has a bumper sticker that says, "This car drove along the plains of the coast of Florida." No one ever says that because there's no virtue in that. The virtue comes in ascending, in going up. And that's the path we're on. It's an upward path. And it's hard. It brings us to a higher standard. I know a woman who has 6 grown children. And she told me one time about something she always taught her kids that when I first heard it, I thought it was rather strange. She said that whenever her kids would come to her and complain about being picked on in school, she would say to them, "Well, maybe that's a good thing." She said, because if they're picking on you, they're leaving another kid alone. Have you ever heard that before? If they're picking on you, they're leaving someone else alone. So when I heard that, I asked her more about it. It didn't make sense to me right away. And she said, "Listen, my kids know that they're loved. My kids know they're loved. They've got all sorts of support, all sorts of love. Not every kid has that. There are kids that don't have anyone to support them. I don't want those kids getting picked on. Why not my kids? My kids have someone to come home to remind them that it's not true." She said, "I see it as my job to give my kids the love and support they need. That's my job. And besides, I don't want my kids thinking that their self-worth comes from what their peers think of them. No way. I want them to have a well of self-worth that comes from a deeper place." As I thought about that a little further, I find myself thinking, that is a uniquely Christian thing for a mother to say. That's uniquely Christian. Let it be my kid. In our culture, a lot of people have noticed that we're moving away from that. Anybody who works in the school system notices that there's a lot more complaints than ever before about kids getting an unfair deal. What about my kid? Why should my kid have this deal? And there's a place for that. We want to advocate for kids, but what if God, the Father, had said that? What if God had said, "Not my child. Why should my child go through this?" It was God's willingness to allow a loved child to go through something that saved the world. It's funny because the story of that woman reveals a law in Christianity that we don't talk about very much, but it's an ever-present law. A law in Christianity is that a Christian would always rather accept suffering than inflict it on someone else. We don't always do a good job of living up to that, but that is the law of our faith. We don't inflict suffering. Christians accept sufferings. We don't pass it on to others. We absorb it ourselves. That mother of the 6 kids told me that her kids hated when she said that to them. They would say, "Mom." But she said, interestingly, all of them now who are grown and have kids of their own, all of them teach their own children that same thing. All except one, interestingly. One of them does not buy it yet. She said, "Mom, I never liked when you said that. I'm not saying that to my daughter." And interestingly, that's the one who doesn't practice her faith. She's not on that path. It doesn't make sense to her. The Christian path says, let it be my child. It's my job to make sure my child's okay. I'm building children that can take it. I don't want some other child to get that abuse. They might not have the support that my kids have. Maybe that is the reason why Jesus gives us this beautiful line in the gospel. Did you recognize it? It's very familiar. "Peace I leave you. My peace I give you." And then he says, not the way the world gives you peace do I give it. I'm giving you a deeper peace. Did you recognize that we do that at Mass every week? That's always at every Mass. In between the Our Father and the sign of peace, we always recall that Jesus said that. And maybe we do it because we need it. We need to remember that we need to dig into a deeper place. We need to get our self-worth from a much deeper place than just what the world thinks of us. We can't depend on our peace to come from being popular or being approved of. It's got to come from somewhere much deeper than that. And then Christ says, I'm going to deliver my peace to you. I'm going to give you my body and my blood on a platter, literally. That's about to happen. I'm going to give you my body and my blood. For some of us today, it'll be the very first time we ever experience that. I'm going to give you my soul and my divinity, and I'm going to let it go inside of you so that you have the strength that you need for the journey. And it's a good thing that he decided to do that, because this is an upward climb. But then again, of course it is. Think of the loftiness of the goal.